Families are always complicated, even more so when your family is an interplanetary force like the Atreides with a glorious history spanning centuries. We already know that nowhere is family more important than in the world of Dune, where all alliances and enmity seems to spring forth from the house to which you belong. As the franchise moves ahead, keeping track of the Atreides family line becomes increasingly important, as they are undoubtedly the most important dynasty in this universe. Thus, in this marvelous video, we'll take a look at all the members of the Atreides family line and figure out the place they hold in the hierarchy of this esteemed house. But before we move on, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It'll allow us to bring more marvelous content to your screens. With that out of the way, let's dive right into the intricate and complex family of House Atreides. Atreus, the ancient founder. There's no better way to start this list than at the very beginning with the ancient founder of House Atreides, King Atreus. It is said that Atreus' story began in the Earth Kingdom of Mycenae in Greece centuries before the beginning of the Dune saga. Under the guidance of Atreus, the house grew to prominence on the planet owing to the era of prosperity brought forth by the ancient king. He passed down his power to his two sons, Agamemnon and Menelaus. In time, both of them would become highly respected monarchs in their own right, ensuring that the Atreides name was etched into history for years afterwards. Though little is known about Atreus' actual life, we can be certain that it is his actions that endowed the Atreides name with the inherent nobility it carries in the Dune saga. King Agamemnon. This ancient ancestor of the Atreides was another great king who laid the foundation of the interplanetary dynasty. A great military commander, he led the house through some of humanity's greatest wars and is now remembered as a legendary hero. It is said that before sailing to Troy, Agamemnon sacrificed his own daughter to please the gods and ensure favorable winds. This led to deep-rooted hatred within his wife, Clytemnestra, who plotted and schemed for 10 years before her husband returned from the Trojan War. Among the spoils of war was an oracle named Cassandra, who predicted the general's demise upon entering his own home. However, Agamemnon did not heed his mistress's advice and was murdered by his wife that very night. The descendants of House Atreides remember the great king's exploits and his tragic demise in a play named after Agamemnon. Paulus Atreides, the Old Duke. The 25th Duke of the Atreides, this old warlord is remembered as one of the greatest leaders the ancient house has ever had. A great leader of people with a knack for showmanship and diplomacy, the old Duke was able to inspire unwavering loyalty from his forces and took over the Siradar fief bequeathed upon his house by the Corino Padishah Emperor. Records state that by the age of 15, Paulus was adept in many forms of warfare and could survive on the battlefield with practically no resources for months at a time. An honorable man, he was essential in building House Atreides' respect among the Landsraad and building communication channels with other powerful houses. Though the old Duke doesn't appear directly in the Dune saga, his influence upon it is quite considerable, as it was he who educated Leto as a commoner and made him work with the villagers to cultivate rice. This down-to-earth upbringing was certainly the cause of Leto's honor, which he undoubtedly passed on to his son, Paul. Paulus was also the one to first retain the services of Thufir Hawat as the Master of Assassins, a position the Mentat would retain for 3 successive generations of rulers. It was also the old Duke who brought in a young Duncan Idaho and honed the boy into the fierce swordsmaster we know today. The old Duke believed that a good leader should be a showman and would routinely participate in bullfights. Unfortunately, he was impaled by a Seleucid bull during the course of one of these fights and died in 10,154 AG. The bull's severed head still serves as an adornment in the halls of the great house. Leto Atreides I. Known as Leto the Just, he's the Lord of Atreides and ruler of Caladan at the beginning of the Dune storyline. It's under his rule that the Padishah Emperor of the known universe becomes a bit too uncomfortable with how House Atreides' influence is growing. This is a testament to how proficient Leto was at taking the reins despite his father, the old Duke's, sudden death. Leto is well respected for his even-handed yet firm style of rule, which is a stark contrast from the rule of their arch-enemies, the Harkonnens. With the aid of his consort Jessica, his mentat Thufir Hawat, and soldiers like Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck, Leto is a formidable force that is able to intimidate the Emperor himself. Though Leto I is killed on the sand dunes of Arrakis during the Baron's raid, his legacy lives on through Paul and Jessica. Even in his dying moments, the Duke is able to almost kill the Baron, exhibiting his great perseverance despite his early death. Some years after the raid on Arrakeen, Leto's remains are finally laid to rest in the skull tomb in the middle of the Great Desert by his son Paul. In a strange ethereal way, Leto managed to live on through his son and grandson through their possession of the other memory. In the Warner Brothers movies, Leto is played by Oscar Isaac.
want it, make me give it to you. Use the voice.
The mother, Lady Jessica. Lady Jessica of the Atreides is probably one of the most intriguing and complex characters in the entire saga. Consort to Leto and mother to Paul, Jessica is an extremely influential figure in the Atreides household. Though the Duke never married Jessica, it's evident that he considers her to be his only partner. Jessica is the result of Bene Gesserit breeding and has been a part of the matriarchal cult since her early years. One of the most pivotal moments in the Dune saga is the revelation that Jessica is actually the daughter of the house's greatest enemy, the tyrannical Baron Harkonnen. She was raised by Bene Gesserit, and her true identity was closely guarded in order to facilitate the coming of the prophesized Kwisatz Haderach. She was planted in the Atreides household as an agent of the cult, but went against their directions when she bore Leto a son, Paul, instead of a daughter. On Arrakis, Jessica was one of the only survivors of the Harkonnen attack and joined the Stilgar's Fremen band along with Paul for refuge. While living in the desert in secrecy, Jessica gave birth to her second child with Leto, Aaliyah, and even grew into a reverend mother for the Fremen. With Paul's rise as the Emperor after the events of Dune, Jessica would take on an even more important path in the complex schemes that guide the futuristic world. In the books, Jessica outlives even Paul and establishes a super-religious organization of her own to combat her daughter Aaliyah's cruel reign. Jessica's decisions throughout the Dune saga were universe-changing and led to the dawn of a new era that not even the Bene Gesserit could have foreseen. She's portrayed by Rebecca Ferguson in the films.
You've been fighting the Harkonnens for decades.
Look!
Paul Atreides, the Chosen. Paul is known by different names to different people, and his actions are practically the reason this list even exists. The protagonist of the original Dune novels, Paul is where it all begins and, in a way, where it all ends. The scion of the Atreides is the only survivor of the massacre on Arrakis and evolves into one of the most powerful individuals in the entire universe. As a child of a duke and a Bene Gesserit nun, Paul was blessed with inherent psychic abilities as well as a knack for combat and warfare. Though he had already grown into an impressive young man by the time his family was ordered to Arrakis by the Padishah Emperor, it was in the desert that Paul really came into his own. After all, he is the prophesized messiah of the Fremen, a result of continuous Bene Gesserit eugenics with just a single misstep. The mysterious cult had intended Jessica, Paul's mother, to bear a daughter, but the lady defied them and gave birth to Paul out of love for Duke Leto. Once he escapes to the desert after the Harkonnen attack, Paul grows into a strong and reliable ruler. However, his prophetic visions get increasingly disturbing owing to continuous exposure to the spice. Eventually, Paul consumes the water of life from a tiny sandworm, unleashing the entirety of his psychic powers. However, these powers are also a curse, and they corrupt Paul into a tyrannical ruler who ends up killing entire civilizations in his pursuit of vengeance and power. The end of Paul's life in the book is extremely tragic even by Dune standards, as the aging emperor offers himself to the desert after losing all his prescient abilities. But many years after his presumed death, Paul re-emerged as the preacher and raised the population against his own house due to the cruelty of his younger sister Aaliyah. In the movie, Paul is played by Timothée Chalamet. Chani Kynes, Paul's true love. Chani is a Fremen warrior who first appeared in Paul's visions before the heir of the Atreides made his way to the desert planet. Born on Arrakis, Chani is at one with the harsh environment of her own planet and is shown to be one of the more resilient characters in the series. Chani is a fierce warrior proficient in the ways of the desert people and serves in the rebel band under Stilgar. We know from Paul's visions that the future emperor shares a strong bond with Chani, and despite political maneuvering, Chani is the one that Paul truly loves. The two met shortly after Paul and Jessica's escape from the Harkonnen forces, and she soon endears herself to the young prince. In the books, Chani remains by Paul's side even after his ascension to the throne. However, it is evident from the ending of Dune Part 2 that director Denis Villeneuve has something else planned for this pivotal character. In the later sequel to Dune, Chani gives birth to two twins, offspring of the now Emperor Paul, both of whom wield considerable powers as the series progresses. Though Princess Irulan tries repeatedly to terminate Chani's pregnancy, the Fremen are able to give birth to healthy babies despite the drugs in her system. Chani dies shortly after giving birth to the twins. However, we are yet to see if this is the same fate that will befall Zendaya's Chani in the movies. Whatever happens, Chani has undoubtedly been one of the most formative influences in the young Duke's life so far. Leto Atreides II, heir to Paul. The firstborn son of Paul Atreides, Leto is one of the more prominent members of his already legendary house. Born to Chie, Leto served as the third and final emperor of the Atreides Empire from 10,219 AG to 13,728 AG. Better known as the God Emperor, Leto II faced some of the worst conflicts in the Intergalactic Federation's history and spent his life trying to contain the various factions that emerged from the fractures in his vast empire. When their aunt, Aaliyah, lost control due to the ego memory of Baron Vladimir possessing her, Paul's twins, Leto II and Ganama, were forced to prevent her from destroying the house. Leto's mother, Chie, died in childbirth, and the two siblings garnered the attention of their paternal grandmother, Jessica. The trained Bene Gesserit nun could sense the latent power in the twins even at the young age of 9, and their prescient powers soon started to emerge. Leto was the quicker learner of the two, and through his visions he quickly learned of the golden path uncovered by Paul, which prophesied the optimum fate for the collective human race. In order to defeat his aunt Aaliyah, Leto took upon himself the Sand Trout, which initiated his conversion into a human sandworm hybrid. This granted Leto immense powers, both physical and mental, allowing him to usurp Aaliyah's throne and crown himself the God Emperor. As a ruler, Leto was extremely tyrannical and ruled over the galaxy with an iron fist, suppressing every person who dared to stand in rebellion against him. He would guide the Fremen to their paradise of a lush green planet, although with countless corpses lining his path. Ganama Atreides. Let's move on to the second of Paul's twins, Ganama. Also born in the vast desert of Paul's Fremen partner, Chie, Ganama's name translates to spoils of war. Her father made this cynical reference to denote the turbulent time in which Gani was born. Gani was raised without a father and found a home with her aunt, the regent Aaliyah Atreides, and her stepmother, Irulan. Unlike her brother, Gani wasn't an assertive ruler, but due to her premature birth, she received Bene Gesserit's wisdom far beyond her years. Practically possessing the mental faculties of a full-grown adult, her incredible power was evident from her earliest years. Due to the Baron's ego possessing Aaliyah, Gani spent a lot of time in hiding while her brother Leto confronted their insane aunt. After ascending to the throne, Leto II controversially decided to marry his sister, making Gani the empress of the Atreides Empire. The two siblings never consummated their marriage, and it remained a political gesture to ensure that none of the other houses could take Gani's hand in marriage. After some years, Leto made Farad'n Corrino Ganama's official consort, effectively mixing Atreides, Harkonnen, and Corrino genes. This union wrested the control of the Bene Gesserit eugenic program from the nuns, and these descendants would form the genetic basis for historical events like the Atreides. Though not as ruthless or headstrong as the rest of her lineage, Gani retains a special place in her house due to her diplomatic nature and commitment to maintaining peace. Moneo Atreides. A direct descendant of Gani and her consort Farad'n, Moneo served as the last major domo under the God Emperor Leto. He's the son of a Duncan Idaho Gola and is widely regarded as the ablest administrator to serve under the God Emperor's 35th-century reign. Moneo was trained from an early age by the finest scholars and experts in Leto's vast empire. In his early years, Moneo harbored feelings of resentment for the God Emperor, reasoning that he was obviously a monster owing to his half-sandworm, half-human body. He joined a group of rebels against the Emperor, wanting to rid humanity of the despotic ruler who was plunging the species into chaos. However, Leto knew that Moneo was an able and powerful individual, so he decided to challenge him with a cavernous test under the Citadel. Moneo wandered through this maze for a long time, losing himself in the labyrinth, and he was eventually forced to consume spice melange to awaken his powers. Soon, Moneo began hearing his ancestor's voice, which revealed to him the golden path laid out by the Emperor. After this, Moneo would develop unwavering loyalty to the Emperor and his plans. For 19 years, Moneo would dutifully serve the Emperor and carry out numerous assignments on different battlefields. Moneo's greatest strength was keeping Leto's court running flawlessly, and he soon grew into a trusted confidant of the Emperor. Eventually, Moneo married Sci-Fi, a fish speaker, and fathered Siona Atreides, a girl who took after her father in her rebellious mannerisms. The administrator cared greatly for his daughter, but in a tragic twist, he faced Siona multiple times while serving the Emperor. When the Emperor finally lost his throne, Moneo found himself unable to live in a world without Leto's reign and died with the last words, Sihanouk, I believe. Siona Atreides. Sion ibn Fuad al-Siefa Atreides is a distant descendant of Gani and Farad'n and is one of the first to carry genes that hide her from individuals with prescient abilities. Born to Moneo, she displayed a strong rebellious streak and began fighting the tyrannical God Emperor from an early age. Her magnetic personality and charisma allowed her to assume control of a group of like-minded dissidents, and for many years, she indulged in missions against the Emperor's forces. On the other hand, Leto was completely aware of Siona's talents and wanted to breed her with a Duncan Idaho Gola, which further incensed the young rebel. Because of her formidable abilities, Siona also underwent Leto's test and consumed the spice melange. This made her privy to the Emperor's plans for a golden path, but this knowledge did not win her over as it had her father. She was finally able to realize her intentions when she met the Idaho Gola once again, and the team paired up to execute a plan that involved drawing the Emperor to the Idaho River. Siona's team damaged the main bridge over the river when the Emperor was heading to his marriage with Huinori. This effectively defeated the Emperor due to his susceptibility to water, and Leto devolved back into a sand trout. After Leto's death, the Emperor's plan for Siona were finally realized as she married Idaho, and they gave birth to 9 daughters and 1,000 sons. Though not all of them might have been Siona's offspring, it's unknown whether Siona ever gave birth to a son. Aaliyah Atreides. Aaliyah is maybe the most important figure in the series, even though she's introduced much later than her sibling Paul. Aaliyah was in Jessica's womb when the latter took the water of life, and thus she was preborn. This made her greatly susceptible to abomination even before birth. Though in the books she's present during Paul's raid on Arrakeen, in the movies she's yet to be born. However, her voice serves as a major influence over the actions of both Jessica and Paul. Aaliyah greatly loved and admired her brother and took on the role of regent after Paul walked into the desert. After assuming power, Aaliyah became increasingly domineering and tyrannical, ruling over the Atreides Empire with an iron fist. In addition to being corrupted by power, Aaliyah was also tormented by the ego memories of her ancestor, Baron Harkonnen. The deceased tyrant took over Aaliyah in a bid to reclaim his power from beyond the grave and transformed the kind young woman into something much darker. When Paul emerged from the desert as the preacher, she ordered his assassination despite knowing the true identity of the religious leader. This one action against her beloved brother showcases how far she had fallen, and it would take the combined might of the Atreides to confront the brutal reign of Regent Aaliyah Atreides. Princess Irulan Corrino. Irulan is the eldest daughter of the 81st Padishah Emperor Shaddam Corrino IV and is the heir to the most powerful house in the world of Dune from an early age. Bene Gesserit saw great potential in Irulan and trained her in all of the Gesserit's ways. Even her father, Shaddam, found Irulan to be his natural successor, and by all indications it was certain that the young prince would be an adept ruler. But all plans were derailed when Paul and his Fremen forces took over the reins of the empire from Shaddam, leaving Irulan with no choice but to accept Paul's hand in a loveless political marriage. After the downfall of her paternal house, Irulan discovered that she would never really be Paul's wife, as the Emperor had his heart set on the Fremen Chani. Chani gave birth to the Emperor's children, and this resulted in a deep-seated jealousy within Irulan. She tried to terminate Chani's pregnancy, but failed in all her attempts. After Paul surrendered to the desert, Irulan devoted herself to raising the twins and grew into a trusted mother figure for both Leto and Ganama. Irulan was a prolific author, and her work appears as an epigraph in many chapters of the original novel, providing valuable insight regarding the myth of the Muad'Dib. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. I bet you're surprised to see this one on here, but in reality, all the great houses in the world of Dune are deeply interconnected, with the family trees often spilling into one another. Such is the case with the Atreides' greatest enemy, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. The tyrant was born on his home planet of Geti Prime and seems single-minded in the pursuit of power from a very young age. His endless quest for power makes the Baron an especially formidable force, and he commits some very horrifying actions throughout the course of the series. Vladimir has no qualms about immorality and is brutal when suppressing any rebellious act. Owing to his reputation for sadism and cruelty, the Baron is extremely feared by the other houses of the Landsraad and employs a number of technical augmentations to his body to retain his youth at the age of 81. After the evil Baron perished on the sands of Dune during Paul's attack on Arrakeen, the dictator took on a much more frightening form and possessed Paul's sister Aaliyah with his ego memory. This would set the young regent on a violent and terrifying path, which would only end with her own death. Glossu Rabon Harkonnen. Rabon embodies the Harkonnen penchant for violence in all the worst ways. He's heavy-handed and brutal, with no patience for plans or scheming. Due to the fact that he killed his own father, the Baron's young nephew was bestowed with the nickname Beast. He was slated to be the next ruler after the Baron. However, Rabon is pretty terrible at administration. This becomes extremely clear when Rabon is unable to stop the Muad'Dib insurgency despite the best of the Baron's soldiers at his disposal. Though Rabon isn't really the sharpest tool in the shed, things mostly work out for him owing to the fact that he doesn't often encounter problems that he can't stab his way through. This long-lost cousin of the Atreides is undoubtedly one of the most terrifying individuals in the Dune saga. Fade Routha Harkonnen. The final Sirdar Baron of the Harkonnen clan, Fade is everything that Rabon is not. He's cunning and psychotic, albeit he hides these traits under his natural magnetism and charisma. Born on Lankivail to Abulard Rabon, he's also a product of the centuries-long Bene Gesserit breeding program, was taken under the wing of an evil baron at a young age. The devious Vladimir raised Fade as his own heir and imbibed within him a strange bloodlust. The Bene Gesserit's original plan was to marry Fade to a daughter of Atreides, uniting the two bloodlines and giving rise to the prophesized Kwisatz Haderach. However, when Jessica gave birth to Paul instead of a daughter, everything changed. Due to their strangely intertwined faiths, Paul and Fade would be deadly enemies for most of the original novels. Marvelous verdict. It's evident that the world of Dune is twisted and complex, becoming even more unintelligible when we dive into the families that rule this universe. We're certain that you might have encountered at least one family member whose arcs caught you off guard and made you question everything you thought you knew about this beloved franchise. However, what do you think? Let us know if we missed out on any Atreides members that you wanted to see in the comments down below, or any members that you wanted to see more of. And, unless you're a bloodthirsty Harkonnen, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Well then, we'll see you next time with another marvelous video.